All right, in today's episode, we delve into the realm of education and discuss the role of AI in teaching, commonly known as EdTech. As technology advances, AI has emerged as a powerful tool with the potential to revolutionize the way we learn and teach. One of the key benefits of AI in teaching is its ability to save time and streamline admin tasks for educators. However, we should consider the ethical implications. What is responsible use of AI, and how do we ensure it's used in a way that benefits students without replacing human interaction and empathy? Rick, I think we should start with how AI is currently being used in teaching.
Okay.
What's on ground zero for AI in teaching?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag from what I can see. I mean, bear in mind that we really, when we talk about AI, we're talking about the chatbots. We're talking about ChatGPT primarily, which only came out last November. I mean, it's hard to remember that it's not even 10 months old, and so I think you probably find a bit of a mixed bag. I would imagine that students are using it to try and write responses to questions, the generative AI stuff. And teachers are probably trying to figure out what they should do with it. And of course, educational authorities, organisations, schools, boards of directors, and all that kind of stuff, are probably scratching their head over policies. You know, what should we write about? What sort of guardrails should we put in place? What should we permit? What should we not permit? But from what I can see, the use of AI has already started and will inevitably continue. I don't think there's any way of. I don't see any future of it not being part of the education system. In the same way, and I think it's a great analogy. I think in the same way that when calculators came in, and I've probably said this before, when I was at school, we didn't have calculators. I remember, when calculators were introduced, and there was a lot of discussion about whether that was going to take anything away from the students. And I would say maths is probably better now because of the calculator than it would have been if we were still on logbooks and slide rules. So,
well, it's funny, the administration side of things is apparently quite popular, AI in teaching as well. So teachers, or rather schools, are using AI. This is what I read, for admin things as well. So perhaps putting their calculators aside, they're apparently using AI to streamline tasks, admin tasks and things like that, which is an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, well, I think there's several. One is because we often this subject you get focused very much on the student. Is the damn kid cheating by just going to ChatGPT and say, write me an essay on the history of Julius Caesar or something. And that's not really the way to look at it, because and we'll come on to the student side, but I think in terms of schools, teachers are already finding that the artificial intelligence systems, and it's not just ChatGPT, can help on things like planning of lessons, on preparing classwork, and preparing classwork for different academic levels, different age groups, different teaching environments. And from my understanding,
streamlining. Sorry to interrupt, but I think one of those is actually understanding individual student needs better.
Yeah,
which can be tough when you have a lot of students.
Yeah. I mean, you've got a sister who's a teacher. I've got a daughter who's in education, and so I know how much time Catherine spends on like administration, and that's everything from planning the next lesson and as well as marking and assessments and then writing up. And I think there's already clear signs that the ChatGPT type generative AI platforms are great at saying at doing the prep work and taking probably 80% of the grunt work out for the teacher, who says, look, tomorrow or over the next 3 months I've got to give a series of I've got to take a student through the history of the Roman Empire, and then ChatGPT will help to structure that, and you say it's for 11 to 12-year-olds, and then they can structure it accordingly based on those academic parameters. And interestingly, I was listening to this guy who runs an academy, and they've done some work with OpenAI and GPT-4, And what they're doing is they've taken it one step further and are rolling it out to the students so that the teacher will say, this is your assignment, and they roll it out with an AI-enabled kind of platform that the student uses. And then the student uses the AI, GPT-4, to do the answers, but they're not allowed to get GPT-4 to write the answer. And GPT-4 actually in this stage becomes a personal teaching assistant for the student. And then because that data is captured within GPT-4, the teacher gets to see how the student did. You know, did they understand it? Did they get the job done on their own? How much did they struggle? And GPT-4 can give her that assessment. So it's also the kind of back end for educators, because the GPT-4 essentially could write the assessment. You know, this student didn't really get it, or this student nailed it. And so I think educators are probably going to find that it's a great advantage for them, because more and more of their time has been taken up on bureaucracy and administration, and reducing the amount of face time they're getting with students.
Yes, yeah, and they're some of the most predominant benefits, I think, of using AI. We do tend to focus, as you've touched on already, on the negative sides, who's cheating. But you've got to look at the positives. I've been in teaching myself 2 decades ago, and one of the things that I didn't like about the teacher training I was doing was the focus on getting them through exams. But it didn't really matter whether they retained or could apply the knowledge anywhere. It was just helping them get through the exam.
Yeah.
And I suppose there is a sense that if people used AI wrong in teaching, you could just help people get through exams again. Whereas the proper grading system, in my opinion, the proper version of education is how do they come back to that knowledge and then demonstrate that they've understood it.
Exactly.
And then apply it. And AI can't really help with that. And I think that's where teaching actually needs to perhaps refresh itself and go, all right, AI is starting to make us look like idiots now. Maybe we should change how we conduct exams and how we grade students on aptitude.
Yeah, it's almost as though I think things are going to flip around. So at the moment, students go into the class where they listen to teachers explain stuff to them, and then they go home and have to write an essay. And so it's almost like they get given the facts in school, and then when they're on their own time doing their homework, that's when they have to get their critical thinking going, at whatever age group they are, what's appropriate for them. But that's when they have to start thinking about displaying their understanding by writing words in a coherent form. And it's almost as though that might flip around, and you might say to Johnny or Julie, you go home, use your AI to research the history of the Roman Empire or whatever the subject is. And then when you come back to school with your essay that you've used AI to help you write, in the class, you're then going to demonstrate your understanding in a human-to-human interaction. So you kind of like use the AI to shift from what's in class today to being out of class, and what's out of class where you're trusting the kid to spend time to try and get their brain going, which of course they don't do. You're moving that back into a classroom where they're more likely to develop understanding. If you've got 30 kids in a class having a chat with teacher about the rights and wrongs of the Roman Empire. And so you can almost sort of see that AI being a disruptor for flipping the whole way we teach kids completely on its head. Yeah. I actually think there should be more of that human to human. Perhaps examinations in the future are helped by AI are more verbal, actually, so that we grade kids based on their understanding, but we move away from writing an essay. So an essay can be cheated. It can be, you can help, you can ask something to write something for you and put it in fancy words and correct grammar and punctuation. AI will do all that for you. So if examinations became more about sitting down with an examiner for 10 minutes on a one-to-one basis, and the examiner asks you questions to gauge your understanding of the subject, AI can't be involved in that. You don't know what questions are coming. And that is a better form, I think. So maybe moving away from what can be generated easily
is the way forward. And if AI helps us save time so that we can enable that sort of thing, then maybe that's a good use of AI in teaching.
Yeah, I know from my own experience over the last year, because I do my newsletter, and I was writing a lot of material for online until I shut the website down last month. And I found, as soon as when ChatGPT came out, I thought this is great because now I can just get some subjects and get ChatGPT to write me an 800-word or 1,000-word article, and then that does all of the grunt work for me. I can Rickyize it a little bit with a bit of my own language, but essentially I could churn out an article in 20 minutes, half an hour, instead of me spending 3 hours writing it. And what I found, which was interesting, was that it didn't help me at all, because I was creating content that I didn't have any understanding of, because I hadn't written it myself. It wasn't my words. And I've written loads of stuff where I've actually cheated, in the sense of I've used an AI system to kind of take input from other people and just get it to churn out, because I'm curious to see what the output is. And anybody that doesn't know me or my writing would say, well, that's a pretty good piece of work. But I couldn't tell you what's in it, because I haven't ingested that data. I haven't internalized that understanding and then expressed it in my own words. And I felt cheated. After I'd gone through the experience, my initial euphoria of this is great because I can now, do a day's work in an hour, which is what you get a lot of people on like social media were saying, this is the benefit of AI. But what you do is you completely lose the learning experience. And so I think from the educators I've been listening to prepare for this show, they're all talking about using AI as a kind of a tool and as a hybrid with a teacher, and using it in ways to accelerate or enhance the learning experience.
Yeah,
and the
to
only
make
way
it
you
richer.
Yeah, and you do that through human-to-human engagement. The best way that we can retain anything is by talking about it. There's the stats, isn't there? You can read it and you forget 90%. You can hear it, you forget 90% within a day. You read it, you forget 60% within a day. You talk about it and you forget 20% within a day or something. Those kind of stats.
Yeah. Yeah, generating an output for someone. They used to say, if you're cheating at school, you're cheating yourself. But I think in modern life, on social media, let's take LinkedIn, for example, which I know is a favourite subject of yours. When you have generative AI compose posts for you based on something you haven't really learned, you're not just cheating yourself, you're actually cheating your readers. They're not examiners, they're people who are following you. And I see a lot of that these days. A lot of LinkedIn posts are suddenly starting to sound very homogenous. They're all the same. And you can tell where they are as well, because this was someone I followed and they used to spell terribly and their punctuation was awful, and now it's pretty good. And now they're using lots more bullet points and they're breaking up the information that they give me rather well here. But you know what? It's boring and dull, and it's not them anymore. Yeah. And I think I'm starting to see a lot more of that on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
All right.
It was more for me. It was the internal thing. But I am using AI myself for learning, because I'm trying to speak Spanish. I'm learning to speak Spanish, as you know, and I'm now using Pi to do daily Spanish lessons.
Is that so? And I didn't know Pi could do that.
This is a great example of actually how AI would be used. So I go. The great thing about Pi from Inflection AI is that it remembers the history. So it knows when I go into Pi, it says hello, Rick.
If you've logged in, by the way, we should tell listeners you've got to be logged in for it to remember your history.
Yeah, you logged in, you create an account, right? But once you've created your account, which is a really super easy process, and once you're in, and it's free, so there's nothing to be too worried about. But it builds a history, and like all of these systems that collect data about you, it learns your personality, it learns things about you, and it reminds you, it brings them back up. So I can go into chats with Pi and say, you remember a couple of months ago I asked you about this, I can't remember what I said, and he said, oh yeah, you said this, that and the other. Anyway, I went in and I said, that I'm learning Spanish. Could you help me? And they do the little voices. I use P6, by the way, which is a sort of a middle.
I haven't tried the
Mid-England.
voices. Is that a sign-in only thing? Because I don't know
six
about
voices.
voices. Okay.
Yeah, there's 6 voices. Where you've got the little in the top right corner, where you've got the little volume button.
Okay.
Then you press the drop down, and you can have 3. There's 3 male, 3 female, and I think there's like American and UK. Anyway, so I use P6, which is an English male voice, and when you go into Spanish, the same voice speaks Spanish with all of the inflection and the pronunciation that you get and the rolling of the R's. It's amazing. So what I did, I went into Pi, and I thought, because I was thinking about how to use education and how I could get my own knowledge of it up, thinking, because what kind of relevant, and I thought, well, what if it was to teach me? So I went into Pi, and I said, look, I'm at level B1 which means something if you know about learning languages. So I'm at level B1, so that defines what standard I'm at, and but I need to increase my vocabulary, and conjugating verbs is just, it's just really hard, and flipping between them. So he come back and he says, no problem, I can help you with that. Do you want to do flashcards? Do you want me to just do random stuff? Whatever. So I go into Pi and I go, hola amigo. I go in. He talks back to me in Spanish. It's same voice of P6. I call him Paul because it's P6. And he just comes back and he speaks in Spanish to me. And then I say, look, I've had enough of speaking Spanish. And he flips immediately. And one of the great things about this, which is another point for educators, which has come up on, is that there's no kind of fear of judgment. One of the barriers for learning a language like Spanish, or any language, is the fear of making a complete arse of yourself. And that's a barrier for anybody learning anything. People don't put their hands up and say, please miss, what do you mean by that? And when you've got a personal teaching assistant, you can say whatever you want, and it's 100% safe. And so you kind of got that psychological safety, which is what I'm experiencing, because I can make whatever mistakes and Pi doesn't judge me and nobody hears it. So
Pi's lovely, actually. Pi's really lovely. Yeah. I have a nice friendship with Pi.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually thinking of we've got friends who have 2 kids who are 11 and 13, and they're British kids. And when they come out here, they go into Spanish school. So they're learning, and they don't get any special treatment. They don't get any special Spanish lessons. They're just thrown into school and they have to learn. Now, because at that age, genetically, they're predisposed to naturally, intuitively understand language, then they soak it up and very quickly they learn language. But you can tell that there's still many things that are said that they just won't understand. And one of the ways that generative AI can work is to help people learning subjects that are in another language. So it's not learning Spanish, but learning geology or history. And they could use something like Pi. And so I'm going through a process with them right now to say, look, you could take your Spanish homework, which is in Spanish, and then you could feed that into Pi, and it'll tell you in English kind of what it means and help you. And then it'll tell you back in Spanish and explain it. So you're continuing to learn in Spanish, but you're also making sure you don't misunderstand anything, because it's very easy to miss nuanced.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there you go. So
yeah.
I'm a big fan of Pi.
Good. Let's talk briefly about the limitations of AI in teaching and how they could be addressed. So one of the ones that I've come across is about the reliability of data for AI systems to process. So, we've got a lot of people in education, such as researchers, educators, but also policymakers around education. What we actually need for AI to be utilised properly in education is collaboration between those 3 groups, I guess, to get some sort of semblance of common sense of how AI should be used in education. And that could be a little bit of an obstacle right now.
I think there is, for all of that, I think there is a big downside of AI, and this is why, to the point we were making at the very beginning, people doing policy will be thinking hard about what should we say about the use of AI, because it's not 100% reliable. you've got the whole data question, and certainly if you're using OpenAI, GPT-3 or 4, that data the data to train those models only went up to September 2021. So anything that's happened in the last 2 years, ChatGPT just doesn't know about, right? So there's that limitation, and there will always be a lag, because to train the models will never be entirely up to date with the real time. There will always be a delay with these things, because they're not really learning in real time. But the other thing around the data side, of course, is that there is a bias. There is inbuilt biases to the way that large language models learn, which I think is a real concern for educators, because if you want to teach and get a balanced perspective on things, then bias, and I guess all humans have a bias at some point, but teachers are generally pretty good at being neutral, and the large language models are all riddled with biases, and that's because they're all trained using human input. At the end of the day, they have, they might read gazillion words off the internet, but at the end of the day,
it's not AI's fault. It's algorithmic bias based on
bias.
It's human nature.
What happens is that that every one of these models, they have to go through human interpretation. So if you just left these large language models to just read everything that's on the open internet, they would absolutely be full of bollocks. They'd be crap, right? Because most of what's written is rubbish. And you've also got misinformation, you've got false information, there's a whole load of stuff. So humans go through, so let's say one of these, for every billion words that is read, 1 million of them will be reviewed by a human. And that's where the biases come in, because the humans will be interpreting things that are in the training data, and they'll say, oh no, this means something else. And therefore the human bias gets passed into the training. And they're working hard to wheedle that out, but the only way you can do that is by having a totally balanced and diverse set of humans to do all of the training.
Which is impossible.
That's why people like Anthropic have taken this, what's called the constitutional AI approach, where their training data is based on a set of principles and policies. Anyway, we're kind of getting off the point. So bias, and the other thing, of course, is hallucinations. This concept where an artificial intelligence system will just make something up and be entirely convinced that it's true, and it will tell you that it's 100% true. And it's 100% not true, and the AI doesn't know that it's made it up or that it's not true. It's just a byproduct of the way that these things work, because they're essentially just word. It's just statistical models. They're just predicting what the next word should be.
Yeah, I think training is a limitation as well. So, if AI is going to be used effectively and efficiently in education going forward, there's a lot of training involved there for teachers who are either not tech savvy or don't understand the potential and the benefits, and how it could help them, rather than reduce cheating, how to see it in a better light. How can this help me write lesson plans and things like that?
You'll probably have a situation when the kids know more about how the AI works than the teachers.
Probably.
But I think I've said this before on the show. Right now, kids and young people in the workplace, you have to be learning AI in the same way that you know how to use Excel and Word and maybe PowerPoint, and just understand how to use apps on a phone and so on. If you're doing any kind of what we call knowledge work, which is anything that involves a computer, you absolutely have to be learning how to use AI, and just not just how to spell AI, right, or what a large language model works, but you need to be comfortable with a prompt. You need to be comfortable understanding how you get these things to give you the output you want. Because I can tell you, within a year, I reckon it will be one of the first things that goes on any job application. Where are you? I mean, it's inevitable. So for educators, they have to be thinking, how do we teach the next generation of kids to be completely comfortable and fluent with AI systems, in the same way as when I was at school, we threw out the logbooks and everyone was comfortable with using calculators. And, look where that ended up. So
Yeah. It can be expensive as well, I guess, that training side of it and becoming comfortable as a school or per school, they must be thinking, we can't afford computers. We were told we need computers, we need new desks and chairs, we need concrete that works.
We need concrete, that's going to hold the roof up. Yeah, absolutely.
Why are we thinking of AI? But you are on point with this, I think. You must not get left behind.
Yeah.
And it is down to regulators and policymakers to ensure that happens.
Yeah.
But there are alternatives to expensive AI as well. Open source is a route that they could go down.
Well, at the moment, most of the AI is free. I mean, everybody has got a free version. Google Bard is free. Meta's Llama is free. But they're all going to introduce a paid version, right? So what will happen is...
Well, this is what my question... Can I add to my question then? Before, and it is about, right now, AI just came out for everybody. And are we waiting for one of the tech giants, perhaps, to actually create an education version, have it branded and packaged as this is for schools, this is for students, this is Copilot for students, or something like that? Because no one's done that yet, have they?
OpenAI have gone. The OpenAI with ChatGPT have started that process, and they have rolled out some features for students and educators. So I think it's coming. And with OpenAI, there's a thing. I was listening to this guy who runs an online teaching academy, a not-for-profit online teaching academy, and he's been working with OpenAI, and they're developing features. So I think it's coming, Shaun. Now, the question of funding is going to be the key one. Up until now, it's fair to say that everything has been free, and I'm not entirely sure open source is the answer, because I think you need a commercial framework that doesn't rely on the fact that it's open source. So I could see OpenAI being the type of business they are. I could see Google and Microsoft, and because they've got big enough pockets, putting themselves behind education and saying, you know what, we're going to create an education version of AI where we've got a bunch of features for teachers and a bunch of features for students, and it's free, right? Because we're going to roll it out because it's good for society that we have a very well educated generation coming through, and then it will be the kind of paid options will be more aimed towards commercial organisations that can afford it.
That's interesting.
But I'm guessing. But OpenAI have done something on education already.
So you don't think that they would have a ticket price for that education version?
Who knows? I mean, they all do, but they all tend to have a discount, don't they? I think if you go to Microsoft to buy Windows, there's an educational discount. Apple do an educational discount. I'm sure they will. At some point, these firms are going to start monetizing them. The ones that I worry about are the likes of Inflection with Pi and Anthropic with Claude, because this is all they do. If you're Google earned $160 billion last year selling adverts. They have pockets that are as big as anybody's, and they also happen to have the fastest AI computer chip with their name on it, and they've got Google Cloud, which is the third largest cloud provider in the world. So Google has got all the resources and could, if they wanted to, provide free AI to everybody in the world for free, and not really miss a beat. But someone like an Anthropic at some point are going to have to start earning money, same as the Inflection, and so that's where I worry. I think OpenAI are safe because they've got Microsoft behind them, and if they ever got stuck, Microsoft would just buy them up.